Hi, thanks for joining me today for our very first holiday special where we take a countdown of the top 5 videos of the year. Now, as we wrap up this year and the new year begins, you're probably going to be watching this on after the New Year's and everything, but it's nice to reflect, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you guys joining me this previous year and all the years before that to make this possible. This has been such a special year. There's been so many things that that's been going on, and our first top 5, ranking from 5th to 1st, probably would have been our first video, like the #1 spot, right? If it had been earlier in the year. That's my conversation, my campfire chat, the podcast that started this year. Well, we had a great one with the one and only Dave Canterbury, and I owe Dave a debt of gratitude that I'll never be able to repay for lots of reasons. But I hope you you enjoy this small clip of it.
I think that ability to be comfortable outdoors and be comfortable with minimal stuff really just came from actually being a kid and doing this stuff all the time with my cousins and my parents and things like that. It just became, like, hey, if we're just going to sleep out here by the fire tonight, throw a sleep bag on the ground, and that's good. That's not a problem. And so it grew up not being an issue, so I don't look at it as an issue now. I think people that have never camped before or just started camping recently in their life or just started doing this whole bushcraft and survival thing late in life don't have that advantage, and so they're not comfortable with it. It takes a while to get to that point. They think they have to have a tent, or they have to have a hammock, or they have to have an elaborate shelter with a fire and all of those things, when if in reality, 90% of the time, if I go out by myself, and probably 75% of the time, even in classes with my instructors, we don't even build a fire unless we're going to cook food. We just flop on the ground and go to sleep. And that's what I'm used to, and it doesn't bother me.
You mentioned in your previous statements that you're constantly outdoors, you're constantly experimenting, you're constantly trying new things. When it comes into the products that you sell, what inspired you to venture into that aspect of the outdoor industry?
Okay, so a lot of it stemmed in the beginning from people asking me, like they would see me use something in a video on YouTube, and they would say, where can I get that? Where can I get that? Where can I get that? And some of the things that we're using at that point in time, just like our forefathers, just like, Miller and Verrill and Gibson and Nessmuk and Kephart, I used a lot of surplus stuff because it was readily available and it was cheap. So when people were asking where to get it, sometimes it was hard to tell them where to go buy it because not everybody has a surplus store within 40 or 50 miles of their house, right? So I started looking for this stuff and seeking this stuff and going to gun shows and places I could buy surplus stuff, and I would buy it and I would resell it to people who were looking for it. And that led to working with some other companies that were developing kit and things that I liked really well. And then that kind of led into, my my claim to fame, if you want to call it that, in the outdoor gear world is stainless steel cookware. That's really our mainstay, right? And all of that, almost every bit of that, has developed from two things. A water bottle, a canteen, which obviously the military uses canteen, so I was used to the canteen concept. And then those nesting cook sets, that you see from the 40s and the 50s, and the Forest Service cook sets, the Palco cook sets, where everything nested inside each other. You had pots, pans, cups, bowls, spoons in one container that you could carry off. And that inspired almost everything I've done since then. And everything else was just peripheral to that.
Dave has earned his success over a long period of time. It didn't happen overnight. Like, the guy has been in the outdoor community for a very long time. And it's just an awesome thing that he attests one of his points of success to something that we share in common. And I found this part of the conversation very relatable and very special. Let's take a look.
So did your living history and your research that you've done, like you just mentioned a ton of different historical authors, did that had a significant influence on your products and your mentality of the product?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'm a big believer in if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now you can, you can improve on things. Obviously, I mean, look back in the days of Nessmuk, balloon silk, right? Who would have thought, right? I'm sure that balloon silk was a new thing. Obviously, it was. But once he's found that new thing, and it was lighter, and it was good for what he wanted, and it fit his mentality of the outdoors in carrying less and being able to do the same things, he latched onto it. And for me, it's kind of like, how can I improve this product? It's not broke, but how can I improve it? You know, continuous improvement is an engineering thing. It's a quality engineering thing. Continuous improvement and being able to reduce the amount of variability within processes, all of that is basic survival mentality to me. And being able to improve on these older cooked systems by making new materials, by making simple improvements and handle designs and things like that, that's what led me to where I'm at today. So living history and history itself has the biggest impact on my mentality and business of anything next to my engineering background.
Oh man, that is cool. That is rich. Awesome. Thank you. For listeners unfamiliar with your Wilderness Survival School, what are the core principles and skills that you guys teach there?
So we teach a couple different paths, if you will, at our school. They all kind of lead to the same end result, but we have a survival series of courses, which just teaches people, whether they're new to the woods or they've been doing it for 50 years. It takes them through the basics of how to survive or thrive in that 24 to 72 hour scenario or a little bit beyond. If you get stranded, stuck, an accident happens, you run out of gas on a logging road, you flip your four-wheeler, something breaks down, but you can't get out. And I call that 90% of the time, what I call that is inconvenient camping. Right? It's not survival. It's inconvenient camping. I didn't plan to be here, but I'm stuck here until tomorrow. I'm stuck here till I can walk out, or maybe I'm far enough in, I'm stuck here till somebody comes looking for me. But that's really not survival if it's not life and death. It's inconvenient camping. So I teach people how to prepare for that, because I'm a big believer that in the psychology of survival, if you can get your mind wrapped around it's really just an inconvenient camping experience, then everything becomes easier. Decisions and stress become much easier and less at a lower level. And so I try to teach that in my basic core series of survival, all the way up to the advanced level where you can actually make your own maps, do self-rescue, live for a longer period of time if you need to than that initial 24 to 72 hours. Plan to be out a longer period of time, like at a hunting camp, a fishing camp, a sugaring camp, things like that. And then our bushcraft series is more of the, I say bushcraft and I almost despise the word, to be honest with you. The funny thing is, I wrote my first book, Bushcraft 101. I tried so hard to convince the publishing company that it needed to be called Woodcraft, because I really wanted that tradition of a woodcraft book in the modern era. I wanted that, that Nessmuk and that of course, Kephart camping and woodcraft. I wanted that to move on and live through history. And they said, you know what, in this day and age, according to the algorithms, according to the computer, according to the powers that be, if we type in woodcraft, we're going to go to fine woodworking. And people are going to look for a book on fine woodworking. So it has to be called bushcraft because that's the latest buzzword. And so I actually, this is a funny thing I'm going to tell you, and probably nobody knows this, that nobody knows it now because it burned up in the house fire that I had 3 years ago. But the very first book that I got from the publisher that said Bushcraft 101 on it, I actually wrote in black marker, wood over bush. So it said woodcraft on it and put it on my shelf because I was so disgusted that we had to call it bushcraft. But, now that I look at it in hindsight, after selling over 1 million copies of that book and it being translated into 14 foreign languages already, bushcraft was probably the smart decision. So anyway, I got straight off of your question, and I apologize for that. But to your point, the second phase of that, or the second leg of that journey, is bushcraft at our school, which really I liken more to woodcraft. I talk about that a lot in my classes, where we teach people to recreate things off the landscape so that they don't have to carry so much camping kit. Instead of carrying fire irons, you're making cooking apparatus. Instead of possibly carrying shelter framing, you're creating that framing off the landscape. Being able to use additional things like withies and vines to conserve your cordage. Being able to make fire with flint and steel instead of necessarily relying on things that are completely expendable, like flint and steel, like matches, like cigarette lighters, so that you can extend that resource by creating fire constantly by making char every time, because a flint and steel is never going to wear out. You can always find another rock, and a steel is never going to wear out. I've got one that's probably over 100 years old now. It still works like the day it was made. So that stuff gives you longevity to be able to stay in the woods longer and conserve resources and carry less. And that's what I try to teach people in woodcraft and bushcraft. So we have two different avenues there that you can go, and then we have a lot of peripheral classes that kind of blend with the two. We have a rope clinic, we have a medicinal plants class, we have a folk skills, Appalachian folk skills class, we have wilderness first aid, we have intensive navigation. There's several that we have that are kind of peripheral to both of those that you can kind of pick and choose from depending on what avenue you chose to go.
And just recently you're starting to, well, actually I think you've done it before, but your blacksmithing class.
I actually, yeah, it's funny that you asked about that. That class sold out in 4 days. We had planned, I had blacksmithing classes several years ago, and they filled well, and they did well. The problem with blacksmithing classes is they are intensive classes for people to do, and you can only do so many people at one time.
Right.
And so what I was finding is I didn't have time to do as many blacksmithing classes as I wanted to do, and then still do everything else. So I kind of had to make a choice. But I had people beating me up for so long about blacksmithing classes that I decided, once I got my new classroom down at the bottom finished, and I actually had a physical overhang down there, like a pole barn type building that we used for a classroom, and I had another overhang over a large fire pit, that we could move all of that blacksmithing equipment down there and maybe do more people at one time. So we opened this class up to 10 people, where I used to only allow 6. And so it's kind of a pilot class, and it's going to be a basic utilitarian blacksmithing class. We're going to make nails and hooks and fire irons and squirrel cookers and flint strikers and things that you would use in a woodcraft environment, or things that you would use in a cabin life environment. And so we're going to start there and see where it goes.
Dave has established a very proud legacy, one that's going to last a very long time. I am 100% certain of it. Now, in this next clip, we start off having a conversation actually about my experience, and I give credit to Dave where it's due. And at a turn of events, he actually shares some of his perspective, and it just adds to the character that he has and that he's well known for.
I can tell you from my personal experience that you've influenced me. When I started my YouTube channel back in 2020, it was really just a way to connect with my students, because we were remote, and I had so much time on my hand. I really wanted to start a YouTube channel focusing on Civil War reenacting, living history, right? Okay. And as that kind of fizzled out, I found some gear that I had, and I was wanting to do some research on. I think it might have been the Stonebridge lantern.
Stonebridge folding lantern.
Yeah, you had a video on it. I was like, wait, what's this? And I watched your video about that and your description of it. And then it got me on a rabbit hole, man. I was just starting to watch all your stuff, saw the one with your pack and making your pack. Like, you've inspired so many people, including myself. And I thank you for the time and instruction that you give just the world, man. Like,
well, I appreciate that, man. I mean, I think there's a lot of people, and not to stray off the subject too much of what you're talking about, because I think that's an awesome compliment to me that happened to you. And I think it happens to other people too. Without a doubt, I hear about it. But what I really think is important, and I think that you're in the same mindset that I am, I think there's two different schools of thought with YouTube today. I think you have the school of thought of, I'm going to go on YouTube so I can get rich. I'm going to make a bunch of money. I'm going to be the next guy with 1 million subscribers that makes $12,000 or $14,000 or $50,000 a month off YouTube. And then there's the school of thought that I have, that I don't care if I make another dime off YouTube. It's a means to an end, because it's education. It's a way for me to reach people that will never be able to come to my school, that can never afford to come there, don't have the means to come there, or they live too far away to ever come there. And I can reach them through social media and give them instruction that will teach them. So it's an extension of my school that's actually on YouTube. And if it happens to feed my business, great. If it happens to feed sales of my books, great. If it happens to feed my school, great. If it happens to make me a little extra money because my channel's monetized, great. But I will never complain that I'm not making enough money off YouTube or that I'm not getting enough views on YouTube, because that's not why I'm doing it. And I think you have that mindset. And there's a few people out there that do, but there's a lot of people that don't. And I think it's a shame, because YouTube should really be for guys like us. It should be a teaching platform, not necessarily a monetary platform. And one should just be a benefit of the other.
Yeah, I agree. The education side of it is so powerful. The outreach, the impact you can make on people's life really is powerful. And just friendships. Like there's people that I've inadvertently met through YouTube. They reached out to me and carried on then through Facebook and stuff. And it's really cool how it connects people.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's made so many connections for me overseas and the travels that I do and things like that. And if you think about that, the power of social media and the reason maybe that this hobby, if you will, this educational platform is getting so big is because social media has such a wide reach. I mean, if you think about it, back in the day, if you look at like Woodcraft and Camping by Horace Kephart, how many of those books do you think he actually sold during the time it was actually written? I would venture to say, I have no idea. I don't know if you could even research that to figure it out, but I would venture a guess that it was probably less than 10,000, probably in the first 4 or 5 years that it was written. And if he'd had social media at that point in time, where he could have advertised that book to millions and millions of people, and just instead of just the people who were probably subscribed to different hunting and trail magazines at that point in time, or publishing houses that could put out letters and press releases through the mail, his reach would have been phenomenal and astronomical. And it would have been Horace Kephart selling 1 million copies in 5 or 10 years. It wouldn't have been, or Nessmuk for that matter. His reach, Nessmuk's reach really came from from writing magazine articles, right. And obviously, right? And that reach allowed him to sell probably quite a few books, as well as his articles being big and reprinted even to this day. But when you look at that, look at how many people today are buying those books. I would venture to say that there are 10 times the amount of sales of those books today than there was when they were written.
Oh, for sure.
And to me, that is a legacy, and that's what I'm after. I want my book to be the book people are reading 100 years from now and comparing things to, like we do today, to Horace Kephart and Nessmuk and Hyatt Verrill and William Miller and Hamilton Gibson and all those guys, Thomas Seton, William Baird, all those guys. I want myself compared to that 100 years from now. And I'm sure you do too.
It's a heck of a footprint, man.
Well, it's an aspiration. It's an aspiration, and I think you have to give respect to those guys for what they were able to accomplish in that time period, and you have to definitely give them respect for what they even do now, because guys like me got all of my inspiration from that type material. So they're influencing someone 100 years later to basically imitate what they were doing, maybe in a modern fashion, maybe with different material, maybe with a little bit different mindset, but it's the same thing. And if I can continue that on, that's what I want to do.
Wasn't that great? Like, he shared with us how he teaches others and how he impacts everybody, and that, I think we can all take something from that. I think all of us with the knowledge, no matter how experienced or inexperienced we are, all of us have something that we can share. And I think we can take some of that experience that Dave shared with us and apply it to our own lives to positively impact others.
Oh man, there's so many gold nuggets in there, and you actually touched on like 2 more of my questions, so I don't have to ask that.
That's okay. Ask him anyway, buddy.
So the next question is, how important is adaptability in wilderness survival and outdoor adventures?
I think it is critical thinking and adaptability are the key to survival. That's just it to me. That is the key element to survival, is being able to understand what the problem really is, and then being able to analyze it to the point that you can fix it and eliminate the variability. There's an engineering formula that I tell people about in survival all the time, because I think engineering and survival go hand in hand in a lot of ways. And formula is y equals f of x. And what that means is the output is always a function of the inputs, and the inputs variable affect the output. So eliminating variability, identifying the critical inputs to what you want in the end is how you understand how to survive. And adapting to that, being able to adapt to variability within the system to eliminate it is the most important thing. And I tell people, a lot of people make survival out to be this big, complicated thing that costs a lot of money to learn. Let's put it that way, okay? To me, survival boils down to three very simple things. Don't bleed out, don't get too hot, don't get too cold. It's that simple. If you can avoid those three things, you're okay. And so understanding how to do that is the key. Understanding the variability within all the things that you need, the goals you need to accomplish to avoid those three things and adapt to them is where survival's at. If you look at adaptation through human history, it's quite evident. And I'm a big believer in if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's solid. What's your all-time favorite historical period or figure?
Well, that is a tough one there. That's a tough one. That's a tough one because, you know, I'm so drawn to so many different areas of history, whether it's prehistoric history with Oates of the Iceman, or whether it's current or more localized history with people like Fred Bear from the 1960s. So I have to fall back to my guy, Horace Kephart, you know. I have to fall back to that period where woodcraft and camping had went beyond just the let's go on vacation to get away from the rat race of the factory to we're going out and we're going to hunt, we're going to fish, we're going to camp, we're going to fellowship, we're going to have fun, we're going to take our buddies, we're going to have a good time. We're not making, this is not necessarily a vacation, it's an experience. And I think that really draws me to the most in history, I think.
That's a great answer. As an instructor and mentor, what is the most important piece of advice you give to individuals pursuing wilderness survival skills?
Do not be afraid to think outside the box and always keep an open mind.
That's solid. You've had a long and diverse career in outdoor industry. What motivates and inspires you to continue pushing the boundaries of your expertise?
Man, you know what? To me, I don't even know what the exact answer to that is, other than it is in my soul. Because anything I do, whether it is developing a new class, improving a current class, teaching someone something they've never done before, developing a new product, finding out what's going to be the best material to use for a certain line of items, all of that stuff to me is the thrill of the chase. Yeah. And the kill, right? It's the kill. That to me, that's what it is, the hunt, right? It's the thrill of the chase and the hunt. And that's so ingrained in my body that everything I do becomes that. It's where can I find my next cold handle skillet, right? If I drive past an antique mall, I'm turning around if I've never been there. I'm like, there's got to be a cold handle skillet in there. Hell, there might be a bush pot in there. I got to go stop and check that out. Who knows when I'm going to find that Abercrombie and Fitch sleeping bag, right? It's the thrill of the chase, right? That's what it is. And when I develop a new product, for me, it's like, it's not only do I think this product is awesome, it's how many other people are going to think this is awesome. And I guess the gauge to that's how many of you sell, and the benefit of that's making money. But really, that's not my focus. My focus is how many other people are going to love this? How many other people is this going to benefit? How many other people are going to think that the 1-quart bush pot nesting in the 2-quart bush pot, nesting in the 3-quart bush pot, nesting in a skillet, put in a bag is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they haven't seen it since they were a kid, and they got to have one because it's stainless steel. That to me is where the thrill comes from, right? The money is just a side benefit. To me, it's the thrill of creation and the hunt that really draws me into all of it. It's in my soul. I can't get rid of it. I can't stop. It's competitive nature, I guess, in a way. And it drives my wife crazy because, you know, we'll be laying in bed for a half an hour, 45 minutes sometimes, and I'll be like, hey, Iris, are you awake? I just thought of something. I got to talk to you about this. She'll be like, are you freaking kidding me? Go to sleep, dude. Talk to me in the morning. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. I got to get up and write this down because I don't want to lose it, you know? And so I've got like 15 of these little Write in the Rain notebooks strapped together with a rubber band at my desk, and all of them have different subject matter. And if I think of something, I go yank it out and I write it down so I can refer back to it the next day or the next week or when I get a chance to develop that idea or that product or that class or that new project. And so I guess that's really it's a long answer, but it's really just kind of it's just inbred in me and I can't get rid of it. It's in my gene.
That's the best answer. That is the best answer. Man, the passion you just conveyed and everything just speaks volumes right there about you and your values, your priorities. It really does. Finally, last question. What message would you like to convey to our podcast and video listeners who share your passion for history, outdoor skills, and adventure?
I would say that you should do the maximum amount of research that you can do on any subject matter that you feel strikes your fancy. And one of the things that I believe in greatly is what I call immersion training. Pick a subject and do it till you can't do it wrong. Then move on to something else, do that till you can't do it wrong, and then revisit the last one to make sure it became muscle memory before you moved on. And I think if you do that, you can understand whatever subject matter it is you want to understand, whether it's living history, whether it's bushcraft, whether it's survival, whether it's hunting, fishing, camping in general, trapping, whatever the subject matter is that drives you to learn, immerse yourself in that subject matter until you can't do it wrong, and then find a new passion, because you always will find something else that drives you. Even in the midst of doing one subject, you're going to get off in a rabbit hole on other things, and you can't be tempted to do that. You kind of have to put that rabbit off to the side and put him in another hole for a minute and concentrate on this one, and then follow back in there when you get done, so you get caught chasing the cheese for so long that you get lost in the maze.
Well said. So, to my younger students, my middle schoolers, that'd be just be a lifelong learner.
I mean, that's it. I mean, every day I try to learn something new. You know, if I can't glean something new every day, then I feel slighted when I go to sleep. You know, I'm like, damn, I didn't learn anything today. I didn't have any new ideas. I didn't come up with any new projects. I didn't change anything in a class. I didn't do nothing today. But if I do a lot of stuff in one day, you know, yesterday I just made a comment last night to my wife. We were getting ready to eat supper, and I was like, you know what? I feel really accomplished today. I got a lot of stuff done on social media. I got a really good video shot for SRO. I developed a new technique for being able to do something in a class, and I even rehandled an axe head that a lot of people said wouldn't be able to happen because it would be junk because it had a plastic handle on video, and I knew I could do it. It's just a matter of looking at it and finding out how. And then it was like, okay, all that made me feel really good. Whereas if I just sat around on the computer all day and not done anything and stayed in the house and watched, you know, TikTok videos till my mind was numb, I would have felt very unaccomplished. So continuing to learn, continuing to strive, continuing to try and find new things and new avenues in your life, I think it's really, really important every day, because when you stop doing that is when you start dying, I think.
Amen.
You know, my father is a big inspiration to me. And I know you said we're almost done. I just want to get this out really quick because I think it's important. But my father worked for RCA for 30 years, and he retired. And when he retired, he couldn't stand it. And one of his friends that retired at the same time actually died within a couple months of retiring. And I think my dad took that to heart and blamed the fact that he retired on that, because he hadn't really been sick the whole time my dad had known him. Mm-hmm. So my dad got a job at Home Depot, became a manager at Home Depot after he was retired from RCA. And then when I started my business and it got so big I couldn't handle it myself, I asked him and my brother to come in and help me manage and run this business. And I took him out of Home Depot to help me run SRO. He's actually the vice president of Pathfinder. My brother's the CFO and I'm the president. And so now at 86 years old, he gets up every morning. He goes to the knife shop. He checks on their production schedule for the day before, checks what materials they need ordered, and check what's in the next knife run, what's coming back from water jet, what's out for heat treat, what's out for logo, where they're at on final production to go to the shop or to the warehouse. Then he drives another 15 miles from the airport to the warehouse over on the south side of Indianapolis and checks in with my brother to make sure that everything's okay for the day. And then by noon, he's home eating lunch with mom and he's done for the day. But every day it gives him a reason to get up and do something. And at 86 years old, he can still do that. And I just hope and pray that at 86, I can still do that.
Oh man, that is awesome. 86 years old, still that active. That is pretty impressive.
Every day.
Man, this year has been such a good year. You know, like I look back on all the things that we did, you know, all the different videos, all the different topics and subjects. And you know, we started some great stuff. We've got the podcast started, Campfire Chats with Honorable Outfitters, and you can listen to that on any podcasting network. We also started the newsletter, the monthly newsletter, and it's not spam, it only comes once a month, just to give more historical detail and some primary sources. A lot of people prefer these things in chunks instead of going to the website and finding the articles. So, and of course on the newsletter, you get more stuff than what's even on the website. And if you're interested in that, then check out the description below, because there's a link, and all I need is just your email and it gets sent. This next video shows what I suspect life was like in the 1920s in the camping community. I would love to do these type of videos a lot more. If YouTube ever becomes my full-time job, then you can betcha I'll be doing them. But for the time being, they're a treat for me and a treat for you. So let's take a look as we check out me setting up camp. And what's surprising, I really don't talk a lot in this video, but there's a lot of engagement from viewers. So maybe I need to take that in consideration and talk a little less and maybe do a little bit more. Now you may remember this rope. This is my old scout rope I did a video of. And man, is this thing handy. Man, there's nothing better than having a good lunch when you're at camp, am I right? Now, this particular lunch, I got a little bit of flack from viewers because they've never done it before, but man, before you knock it, you got to try it. And as we all know, those of us who go camping, everything tastes better when you're out in the field, no matter what it is. Even if it's something that you don't normally eat, for some reason, it just tastes better when you're out camping. So take a look at this video, clip of the same video of life in the 1920s, where I share with you my lunch of fried taters and rice pudding. And I swig it down with some good old camp coffee.
All right, so our taters are done. So is our rice. We're going to pour some milk in there. Stir it all up. And we're going to add sugar to taste. All right. Now what I like to do is I like to take my potatoes and put it in with the rice. The saltiness of the potatoes and the sweetness of the rice just go together really well. Here we go. The first taste test. Okay, here we go. First taste test. That's so good. It's such an easy, relaxing meal. You know, you got your rice, you got potatoes, kind of got your dessert all in one. You know, you could have bacon with it. Speaking of which, those of you who purchased my cookbook, I made something especially for today's video. This is called a dough god. Now it's really simple. It's the easy field bread, if that's what you want to do with it. I made it at home, so it's also nice if you're a hunter or you're a fisherman or something. You can bake this ahead of time, and it's really good. So this has a secret ingredient. The secret ingredient is bacon. So if you're interested in a recipe like this, or rice pudding, or a lot of other field recipes, it's perfect for the camp crafter. Now this is simple, but there's actually ones in there that are pretty advanced. That are better suited for in-place camp, or you make it ahead of time and bring it with you, including lots of different desserts like cookies and cakes and stuff. So if you're interested in my recipe book, the description below has my email address. You just shoot me an email and I send it your way. It's a PDF. It's not a hard copy yet. I'm working on that. But it's a PDF version. So you can download it on your phone and take it with you. You don't have to worry about it getting wet or damaged. So that's what makes it really good for camping as well. Because chances are you probably already have your phone on you. Download the book and you got it with you. Now the only thing I'm waiting on is my coffee. You hear all those birds? You hear the squirrels knocking? This is a beautiful, relaxing day. And I'm not even staying the night. So what can you do
So what can you do to get the most out of your time? Because like you, I don't have a tremendous amount of time to get out in the woods like I want to, you know? I get to go with my scout troop, but that's pretty much it. Every once in a while, I get to sneak away like I do today. I'm on spring break, so I have a little bit of extra time. But things you can do is you can always set up a cot or a hammock or just lay out your sleeping bag in your backyard. You know, you can go to a park like what I am here and bum it a little bit. Maybe you have yourself a backpacking stove. If you have a backpacking stove, you don't even have to build a fire. You still get that experience of just being out in the woods. And you're just carving out your time. Now, to do it well, because time is precious, you want to plan ahead. Like making the bread ahead of time. You know that, hey, this day I'm going to take an hour or two. I'm just going to go out to the woods. I'm going to bum it for a little while. So you got a plan. My middle child and I, during the nice weather, oftentimes you'll find us in our backyard. We'll set up the hammock and we'll just lay out there, you know, for 15, 20 minutes, maybe a half hour. A nice thing about a hammock, if you have one, is it doesn't take that long to set up. So you're just laying there, you're talking, you're having fun. Oftentimes my daughter will come out and she'll be playing around us and all that stuff. But just use the resources that you have, and you gotta carve it out. Everybody deserves time to recharge your batteries. And this is one of my favorite ways of doing it. If you've liked that particular video, that clip of camp life, well, man, do I have a special opportunity for you. I am working and partnering with Dave Canterbury at his Pathfinder School in southeastern Ohio. And we're hosting a squirrel camp. Now it's a historic squirrel camp, and it's at the end of October next year. And by the time you're watching this, I guess it would be this year, 2024. So if you like historic camping, if you're a hunter, then man, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for you to come to Dave Canterbury's property and live life a little bit in the old ways. And you get to sit around the campfire with me and Dave and a bunch of other great people and other well-known campcraft YouTubers that the list is growing. So check out my newsletter again if you want to be kept in the loop of it. And there are people who will get the newsletter get the first updates. So I hope to see your name on the list when we get it going. Anyways, let's take a look back what 1920s life was like again. Now, my last video, I did a very brief video discussion about the Nesic Trio and how that's going to lead up to this video, which is all about his knife. So if you're thinking about getting a particular knife, style of knife, which there's lots of different styles, the Nessmuk may be the one for you. Now, there's a lot of contemporary modern renditions of the Nesic knife that does not exactly line up with the historic one, which is fine because really the historic one was designed for a specific use that most camp crafters and outdoor adventurers really don't have a need for. So if you are thinking about a historic knife, like me for my purposes, and I am, or I do a lot of what this knife is designed for, then reaching out and finding someone to make a historic rendition of it may be a good idea for you. But if you are just a contemporary modern day camp crafter, then the more modern Nesic knife, if you like that shape, it may be good for you. Really, there are better campcraft knives out there than this particular shape. So let's dive into it and I'll explain to you why this knife may not be the best one for you, unless you do what it was designed for. Now, just like in my last video, I explained having a pocket knife for all your basic cuts, especially your fine detail cuts, you should have one. You know, just carry it on you. It's a good idea. Always carry a pocket knife. And having a hatchet of some sort, unless you really like your silky saw or your pruning saw, then having a hatchet, I'm kind of biased towards it. But as far as Nessmuk's knife goes, now this thing looks cool. Like it screams awesome, right? Like nothing like rugged outdoorsiness. Someone whips out this knife and you know they're meaning business. But right away you can tell what this knife is going to be really, really good at based off of its shape. Now, what classifies a traditional or very basic Mic Knife. The most endearing part of it is the belly. You can see how wide the belly is from the spine, and the spine is a very gradual going outward, right? And it has a fairly straight point coming from the back of the spine. So what is this good for? Now, if you watched my Horace Kephart video of the knife and explaining the different shapes and what they're good for, I went into a very good detail about that. I'll put that at the very end of this video. But the weight and balance of a knife can either work for you or it can work against you. This is a 5-inch blade knife, and it's got a deer stag handle on it, and let's see where it shines on the cutting itself. I'm going to really quickly show you just here, and then I'm going to move the camera so you can see exactly how well it cuts, because it cuts really well. It's very easy. The weight of it works out. If you're just trying to make some shavings and curls, if you're just trying to skin something maybe, then that's what this is good for. But when we start using the different cuts, the balance is not quite there. You have to get really, really close, especially to the first inch, 2 inches of the knife, to have the most control. If you try to use the middle or towards the tip, it just does not have the same type of control. Whereas my Kephart knife, it's a little bit more balanced all the way up and doing that type of cut. Now, many people in my previous video said that it was a ridiculous or most awkward way of making cuts and curls. But it's efficient. When you think about the shape of your knife and you practice using it, try to find the most efficient way of cutting, because every single knife, I promise you, every single knife cuts a little bit different based off of course, its grind, of course, its taper, and its shape, and its balance, its weight, etc. So I'm still sticking to it. Even though people may make fun of me that it's ridiculous looking, it makes sense if you actually practice with it. You know, this knife, the Nessmuk knife, has grown on me quite a bit. And I'm a little bit critical in this next clip of the video. The Nessmuk video was one of my top videos, and it's no surprise because it's a knife video. It seems like that's a trend, and I'll make a point of talking about that in a little bit. But man, you know, there's just something about this knife that just screams nostalgia and coolness, right? Now, the critiques that I made, I still stand by most of it. However, since then, I've learned a lot about this knife, and I even made an updated video about it. It's not quite as popular as this one, but I think the updates really put to rest some of the positive things. But my views have changed so much that I have partnered with a veteran blacksmith here in Ohio. I've known this guy for 12 years. And when I got to discussing with him the Nessmuk knife and the improvements that I would like to be made on this particular version, he was more than excited to do it. Now, don't get me wrong. This is a beautiful knife made by a master bladesmith, and it's beautiful. Like, it is just great. It is solid and definitely won't let you down. I've got no complaints about the build of this particular knife or what the smith did, what the bladesmith did. However, I think I could have done better. So, talking it over with my friend and talking over the historical accuracies, or rather inaccuracies of this one, I figured this one's actually going to be better. Now, every single knife is going to be unique, just as unique as the deer whose antler adorns the handle, right? But it's going to be a 1/8 inch blade versus the 3/16 that this is. It's also not going to have the pewter bolster on it. if you look at the picture of Nessmuk's drawing, it does not show a pewter bolster. It is very plain. It is very utilitarian. And that's something I think we missed just due to artistic license. This thing is so heavy, and when you're camping, you know, you don't necessarily need this weight. In fact, since Nessmuk was a lightweight camper and of the 19th century, the 1/8 blade definitely makes more sense. So these have already actually been sold. The first set was sold for $250. Now they're going to be $300, and that was the special holiday pricing. But these knives are going to be awesome if you're a hunter or if you're a historic camp crafter. I'm going to do a very special video just about this and highlight some of the nuances about it and how this is actually better than this one. But if you are interested in getting yourself an authentic Nessmuk knife that is practical, lightweight, and a literal work of art, then you know, make sure to message me below or send me an email, something like that, and we'll get you one for sure, for sure. I'm really excited about this partnership because the Nessmuk knife is actually just the first of several versions he's going to do for me. As soon as this next run sells out, he's going to be creating the Kephart for me, and we're going to do an authentic Kephart knife. You know, that's just, these things just keep getting better and better and better thanks to you, you know, the viewers, because without you guys there wouldn't be this channel, right? There'd be no point of it. But I would do a disservice if I didn't give credit where it was due to the patrons of this channel, because there's people who give whatever they can give. It might be $1, it might be $25. I think right now the highest patron on there gives somewhere around $50 a month, and I think there's someone on there that even gives $50 a month. But without the patrons, then this channel just would not have been able to accomplish what it has up to this point, because it takes a lot of resources. You know, because of the patrons, I've been able to upgrade the sound equipment. If it wasn't for the patrons, I wouldn't be able to afford the monthly fees for the podcast streaming service. And of course, I wouldn't be able to continue to add to the collection that not only I get to share with you guys, but also in public education, because I go around all over Ohio, and I'm looking forward to next year possibly going out of state to share historic campcraft and educate others, especially young people. I always get excited when young people get an interest in it. But you know, people give whatever they can, even if it's just what did you say? Pour me a cup of coffee, you know. So that's like $5, you know, a couple dollars or whatever. Again, anything's appreciated, but without them, then we just wouldn't be able to do this. So if you're a patron of mine, or if you're considering joining Patreon, I really appreciate you. Thank you. Now this next video is all about Ontario Knife Company. Go figure, it's another knife video, right? Now, Ontario Knife Company is one of America's oldest remaining cutlers that's still in business. Unfortunately, after I made this video, it was announced that the company was closing its doors. And that's kind of rough, like it really, really is. Now, as of filming this, right now, we don't know exactly where the Ontario Knife Company is going to continue making knives or not. So it's still up in the air. But I hope that they can get their feet back on the ground. They can revert back to their traditions and hopefully even increase its quality. So let's take a look. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Ontario Knife Company Fish and Small Game Knife. Now, the reason why I got this is because I was looking for a cheaper alternative for my son. This is a perfect knife for a beginner, especially if you like the traditional Kephart style knife. Now, the thing with kids and possibly beginners is that you don't necessarily may know how to handle a knife all the way, so you're trying to figure things out. Maybe you're just trying to figure out if you really like the style, because there's lots of different styles out there, and the spear point Kephart style knife isn't for everybody. I personally really like it, and because of that, I'm a little biased, so I want to push that on to my son, and he can play around with it. Plus, as we go through this video, wait until the end, because I'm going to tell you all the reasons why this style of knife may be a really good option for you if you're a hunter, if you're a fisherman, or if you're just a campcraft or camp enthusiast. I bought this for like 28 bucks. It was on sale all last month. I figured, man, this is a perfect opportunity to get this knife. And because I'm a scoutmaster, I'm always trying to think of, you know, cheaper alternatives that are affordable for scouts to get into this, because man, camping gear can get kind of expensive. And Ontario Knife Company has a proud history. Personally, I own an entire butcher's set of the old Hickory butcher knives. It's in my kitchen. I use them all the time. I honestly prefer it to my other store-bought knives. I like the carbon steel. I like how easy it is to maintain the steel, and it keeps an edge, which is really important when you're outdoors and you're doing woodcraft or anything else. So a lot of people tend to take old hickory knives like this butcher knife here, and they turn it into a Kephart style knife. Well, several years ago, Ontario Knife Company finally caught on and decided, heck, we may as well just make one for ourselves. And again, it's super affordable at around 30 bucks. So these are my first impressions about the knife. I've only taken it out of the box. I've taken a look at it, and you're going to experience what I think of, at least about this particular knife. As we open it up, you know, rectangular box, you get a sheath knife. Now, if you've seen other videos about the Ontario Knife Company, fish and small game knife, you know that it's made in China. That doesn't really matter to me personally, that a sheath or something else is made in China. What matters to me is the quality of the leather, the thickness of leather, and whether or not it's going to hold up. Now, the thickness of this leather is perfectly fine. The stitching, you know, the stitching could be a little bit better. The style of belt loop, see how this is here, where it's got the stitching on top instead of it being looped around? That's a wear point, and there's a lot of stress on that, especially for outdoors. So I don't really care for that aspect of it. But overall, the leather in the finish of it looks pretty good. Now, the knife is made out of 1075 steel. Some people are like, whoa, that's like really soft steel. You know, you want to go 1095 or O2 or stainless, you know, all these other things. Now, the nice thing about 1075 and why, especially if you're a beginner, this steel is really good for camp crafting, is because when you're out in the field, stainless steel can be kind of a pain to sharpen. It holds the edge, it doesn't get rusted, but 1075 is really easy to maintain. So there's a positive aspect about it. And that's another thing that drew me to this knife, especially for younger people and beginners, because scouts, you teach them how to do it, but there's a little bit of a learning curve when it comes to that. So I think this knife gives younger people or beginners a good place to start with their knives. It's flat ground, if that matters to you, just like you would find in your regular Walmart kitchen knives or other kitchen knives. The edge is a V-edge. It's not a chisel grind. It's not a Scandi grind. It's not a convex grind. It's just a traditional V-edge. Now, as I take out the knife, and I'm just feeling it, it's a little rough. The finish on the handle isn't super smooth, but it's not super rough. So just take some sandpaper to it, and that's no problem. The pins look really nice. It's brass pins, so they'll age well. The finish on the knife isn't mirror finish. All right, has a satin finish or a brushed finish, whatever you want to call it, but it's just not mirror finish. The nice thing is this will patina nicely the more you use it, especially if you use acidic vegetables and fruits. So that's pretty cool. You know, as you shake it, it doesn't come out. So I don't see that that's a problem at all. The fit of the steel to the handle, well, that looks okay. Like, it's not perfect, but it's not bad either. If it really bothers you, it wouldn't take much to finish that up. The evenness of the handle, though, as it's rounded over, looks pretty good. You know, and I like black walnut. You know, Ohio boy, we got black walnuts all around us. Okay, I'm going to move the camera so you can see up close some of the different things I'm talking about. So one thing I don't like is how the belt loop comes all the way and stitched here and it's stitched here. I would have preferred the belt loop to come up and over and under. That way it could be stitched with this being on the sheath itself, but a slight loop. That way there's more pressure on the leather itself than the stitching. Versus down here, you know, that's traditional, that's perfectly fine. And now the only thing you have to worry about is how good is the quality of the thread that was being used here. The stitching itself may not be a problem. So we'll have to see as it gets used how it tears up, if any. But that right there, that's a weak point. That's something I don't really care for about this sheath. But everything else, you know, you can shake it pretty crazy and violently and it doesn't come out. I would have liked it to come up more on the halfway to the handle, but as it stands, it's not bad. So as we take it out, as you can see, it still has that flat grind. The V edge, it comes to a nice point. It's a spear point, and it really does flare out, just like my more traditional Kephart. If we take a look at this, now this is a 5-inch blade. There's that. The handle is pretty close to what my traditional Kephart is. And the thickness, the Ontario Knife Company knife is actually just a little bit thinner than mine. I also don't like that right there. I wish that they would have brought the wood up to this, because as you're holding it like so, that can kind of tear you up, especially depending on what kind of force you're using and what you're doing with it. First thing I thought we would go over is curls, you know, because that's what people do with the knife. I'll later on do a tri-stick with this, and I'll give you my review about that. But as it is, if you've never seen my other video on the Kephart and why I like to cut this way, check that out at the end of the video. No, that's not bad. Let's do a thumb. Well, my initial impressions is this is kind of dull. It's not super sharp because my thumb's got to put a lot of pressure on that. This is dry seasoned wood. Yeah, it's not terribly sharp. You know, the #1 video of 2023 really surprised me. I guess it kind of shouldn't, because 3 out of the 5 videos on this list are all about Wood's tools. And honestly, this particular video made me consider possibly changing the direction of my channel and just focusing on Wood's tools, whether it be hatchets, axes, or knives, or other Wood's tools. But I really enjoy talking about the plethora of all that Campcraft includes. So I hope you like this video as we wrap up our list. The #1, the Nessmuk Trio. The Nessmuk Trio is dead. It's outdated. We shouldn't even be talking about this still. Or should we? I, of course, being a classic camper and historical camper, I personally believe that the Nessmuk Trio, or the Kephart Trio, still has a valid place in outdoor recreation and adventure. And I'm going to explain why. The first thing, when it comes to pocket knives, you know, just about everybody should have a pocket knife when you go outdoors. Even if you don't have a belt knife, even if you don't have a hatchet, a pocket knife is going to be your #1 tool when you need it, whether it be carving something, cutting rope, maybe doing some type of first aid when you're digging out a splinter, something like that, or even hunting. You got to take a pocket knife. You know, this is like one of the old-time scout essentials. You need one. Now, depending on what you're going to do with it, then that's more of a personal choice. Kephart and Nessmuk, they believe in taking a 2-bladed pocket knife. I think 2-bladed pocket knives have their place, especially if you are going out hunting and getting your own game. Like both of those gentlemen, historically speaking, that's what they went out and did. They went out in the woods and they got their own food, right? Today, most of us really don't do that. Unless we're really going on a fishing trip, we're not, you know, going out and hunting. Now, of course, that changes depending on what you're doing, but for the average person, you know, having a 2-bladed pocket knife may not be the right tool for the job. Then comes in the Scout pocket knife, or even the Swiss Army knife. The Scout pocket knife is pretty basic, and Kephart, he didn't really favor the Scout pocket knife, but I think it's because he's a man of his times, right? And it's new. Old men, they have a hard time with adapting. So the Scout pocket knife generally has your regular blade, primary blade, usually has a can opener of sorts. It has some type of screwdriver and bottle opener and an awl. This is the predecessor to the Swiss Army knife. Now the Swiss Army knife has way more gadgets and really takes up just about as much space. So a Swiss Army knife could replace this one here. Again, we're adapting to our times. But having some type of bottle opener or can opener is really important, especially if you are taking goods along with you, so you're not damaging your blade or you're just not slamming it against a rock or something crazy like that. But also having the ability to fix your equipment, like using the awl of a Swiss Army knife or a Scout pocket knife is really important, and possibly one of the most underutilized, so least used or most underutilized tool of this knife. Then comes your belt knife. Now, belt knife, personal preference, okay? But everybody should have some type of belt knife when you're going out hiking or on an extended camping trip, because this is your workhorse. Sure, your pocket knife is going to be in your pocket and you want to keep this really, really sharp for doing some finer tasks. But this is what you really probably going to be cutting your rope with, or making points, or doing some type of bushcrafting or pioneering work where you're trying to build something, right? So having some type of belt knife is really important. Pick one out that suits you, your style, and what you like and your needs, okay? But belt knife, still relevant. I think the most contentious point then out of this trio is the hatchet. Is the hatchet outdated? Is it something that your average camper, bushcrafter, scout, or whoever, hiker, really needs? Some really prefer taking a saw, and I have no problem taking a saw. In fact, when I'm doing bushcrafting, where I'm actually building things, I kind of prefer having a saw because I get those nice, clean, precise cuts that I want when I make something. You could do it with a hatchet, but man, something looks really sharp with having a nice, clean, saw-cut piece of wood. Not necessary though, okay? So, is the saw better? I think the saw is better in those applications only because of its cleanliness. I disagree that it's better with maintaining, because I'm already taking bladed items. So I'm already going to take some type of pocket stone with me to maintain, to keep them sharp and keep them the edge strong and going the way it needs to go, which works fine for having an axe or a hatchet. But when it comes to a saw, you really need to have files and all those teeth. They're precise. They may have to be bent, or a tooth could be broken. It's a lot more to maintain with a saw in case something does go wrong. Whereas even if I get a chip with my hatchet, it may take a while, but I can get the chip out and regrind my hatchet a lot easier than a saw, generally speaking. Unless I hit a big rock or a chunk of metal, it's not going to take enough of a chip out of this hatchet that's going to take me a long time to repair. So personally, I think having some type of chopping implement, whether it be a hatchet or maybe perhaps even a machete or some other type of wood tool, works better than having a saw. If I'm going to take one or the other, it's going to be a hatchet. It just looks cool, but I like having the pole. If I'm hammering down stakes or I'm putting in pegs, having that pole of the hatchet, that's pretty sweet. I don't have to try to search around for a piece of wood that's not punky, that's going to hold up when I start whacking on it and it's going to disintegrate or break apart on me. Having the pole of the hatchet and use it to tamp down stakes is really nice. Okay, so I hope this helps you in making a decision or giving you some other things to think about as a modern or contemporary camper, and maybe along the same lines as the historical campers that came way before us with their wisdom. So ultimately, it's your kit, and you're going to do what works best for you. So what works best for me here in Ohio may not be the best thing for you, but I guarantee you a pocket knife and a belt knife is important. You should definitely have those. Man, has it been an awesome year. I have learned so much along the trail, so to speak, and I really appreciate having the opportunity to serve you guys, and I hope that I get to continue serving you this upcoming year and learning along right side with you about historical campcraft, all the different incredible artifacts that our forefathers used and some of you have used yourselves. You know, like this is such a great topic and I love using it, learning about it, learning about the companies, learning about the people that used it. It's just so awesome. So I hope you can join me next year in October, and I hope that you decide to join the newsletter and be kept in the loop with all the different things that may come up, whether it be the October hunting camp, whether it be you know, some of the articles about the historic gear that we use, or even just tips, tricks, and you know, stuff I find that you might find valuable as far as equipment goes for a good price. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I really hope you guys have a wonderful year in 2024. Give a kiss out to your loved ones, and you know, we'll see you guys next time. Take care. Cheers.